First things first, this video is not a hate video. It is not me shitting all over Unfinity. I'm actually quite enjoying the spoiler season and some of the stuff in it's quite fun. However, and that's a big however, there is some weird shit going on, right? Like, what the fuck is going on? This video is brought to you by CoolStuffInc.com, so you can pre-order singles or sealed product for things like Unfinity or the Warhammer decks. Use the link in the description below, code KENOBI at checkout, 5% off your order to help support the show. In this video, I'm going to go over what is legal and what isn't. I'm going to talk about some of the mechanics of Unfinity and what I think of them, how they will affect the game as a whole, what people are upset about, and then finally, why are some of these cards legal in Commander and Legacy and such? Unfinity is the new joke set from Magic the Gathering. Traditionally speaking, these were silver-boarded sets. All their names begin with un. Unglued, unhinged, unstable, unsanctioned, and now Unfinity. All of the ones before had a name where it was actually a word. Now it's not a word. It's a changed word. I really don't like the name, but that's not really much of a point. To clarify the legality of cards in this set, if it has a normal holo stamp, it is legal. If it has no stamp at all, it is legal. This, and by legal I mean Commander, Vintage, Pauper, and Legacy. Basically eternally playable. Any format where any card is legal, any card with a normal holo foil and no holo foil are legal. Then anything with the acorn stamp is not legal. These cards are not playable in normal Commander. You have to agree with the table before you play. They're not legal in Legacy, Pauper, or Vintage. And it really is that simple. Everything in the set is eternally playable unless you see the acorn down here. Some people are saying this is confusing. I don't think it is, but perhaps we just need to make it as clear as possible to everyone. If you see an acorn, you can't play it in normal black border Magic. Prior to this, all cards in unsets were silver bordered. They were silver bordered instead of having the acorn, and all of them were, by the way, barring the lands, I guess, the full art lands that were used to sell unhinged sets in the past. And that's a point. Unsets never really sold in the past. They normally utilized the full art land treatments that were available unglued, unhinged, and to a lesser extent unsanctioned to sell the packs to consumers. But as full art lands have become a way of spicing up and increasing the sales and the desirability of every set under the sun, because you can't get away from full art lands now, they've had to look at doing something else. Now, some people have been saying the reason that some of these cards are legal in eternal formats is probably some sort of executive decision in order to sell packs. And I think that's probably only half true. I have no evidence to this, and I'm probably gonna get a bit of pushback about this. But what I believe has happened is that unsets aren't popular with the higher up because they don't sell. But instead of them saying, you know, here's my idea for how to make it sell, it's more like they've said you need to make it sell. And the way to make it sell is to make some of the cards chaseable, desirable cards for eternally viable formats. Commander, Legacy, Vintage. Now, credit where credit is due. Even if Mark Rosewater and co, and it is Mark who's leading design on this and he loves his unsets, it's his personal baby. Even if he has made this deal with the devil, if you will, he has gone out of his way to make sure he gets to make another unset. Maybe his final unset at this rate, who knows. And as a last hurrah, in order to get it out there and into the public's eye, he's had to put Commander staples, or Commander playables, should we say. None of them are staples yet. Commander playables into the set. So this is a hypothetical, and if we're honest, I don't see any of the cards in here being pushed to be staples in those older formats. To be honest, Saw in Half, which is one of the preview cards, or the early previews that we saw like, what, 6 months ago? This might be the best card we've seen so far for Commander. It's generally a very strong Commander card. And also, to be honest, the flavor, theme, and art of it could have fit into Battlebond for the most part. It's whimsical and it's colorful, but Battlebond was too. This doesn't feel that far out there. What could have happened was, if we were going down the real cynical route, is that in the same way that Modern Horizons needed to sell packs by being good modern cards, they end up being the best modern cards, better than anything else. We're not seeing that in Unfinity. But there is a backlash because some of these cards are a little bit strange. Space Chase is probably the best example of this, where it asks you to put your creatures into 3 piles. It literally just asks you to divide your creatures up left, right, or middle, and then they're affected by abilities on the card. This card has upset people, more so than any card in recent memory. People are rule zeroing it, threatening to eat it, saying they're gonna fucking kill themselves if they see it across the board from themselves. And I think the absolute nonsensical overreaction to this card is the best joke that Unfinity has brought us. It is like a parody of what the Magic community is usually like. What the fuck? I'll take 1,000,000 Space Bellerins and co over Ikoria cards like fucking Luris. One of these is a whimsical, silly card that will see a small amount of play at commander table and will make a weird board state. The other one fucking ruined Magic for a couple of months, if not for a longer period of time, depending on when you argue the problem was actually fixed by Wizards of the Coast. But the reason I bring up companions is because they are also a baby of Mark Rosewaters, but they also fucked around with the outside of the game. And that brings me to the mechanics of Unfinity. Unfinity has quirky, weird shit like Hats Matters, which is only on the Acorn cards. It has wordplay, where you get to change the name of this card to Wizard of the Guacamole and make it more powerful with stickers, which I'm going to come to in a moment. These things are legal in Pauper and stuff. It's a bit weird. I mean, it counts Y as a vowel and probably makes it a nightmare to be played by someone who isn't speaking English, but I guess it's never going to see much play. If it becomes a Pauper staple, then I guess we can all just like collectively shit ourselves out of existence. And then we have like the overtly whimsical, the Comet Stellar Pup, which is quite a jarring but also quite a powerful planeswalker that may see a small amount of play in Legacy, you never know. Minsc and Boo is currently doing very well in the format, so having another 4-color planeswalker that with a couple of dice cards could even become an archetype in itself is an interesting one. The power level on this Mythic Planeswalker is pushed up a little bit and it could be good. I'm unsure. And then there's also a mechanic of people outside the game where you ask people outside the game to make a choice for you. Again, Acorn only. But the two mechanics I do want to focus on for this video are the two ones that create extra decks. They ask you to bring an additional deck of cards to the game of Magic alongside your normal 60 or 80 and your 15 card sideboard. Stickers are an extra deck outside of the game. When you show up to a constructed game, you will have to have at least 10, no more than 48, and there are 48 variants of this. And then during the game, you can get tickets, which are like a resource similar to Energy from Kaladesh, a thing that is only generated by cards in the set. And then some cards will trigger to allow you to put a sticker on an online opponent you own, which then allows you to access the stickers from your sticker deck. What happens at the beginning of the game is that you randomize and you draw 3 of the 10s. You have access to randomized, even more randomized sticker stuff, and the stickers can go onto cards in the game. The name and art stickers do not have a cost. When you activate a apply a sticker effect, you don't have to pay any tickets. Meanwhile, the keywords, extra abilities, power and toughness, they all require some amount of ticket cost. So those things are gated by a second resource. The art stickers have literally no effect on anything at all within the game outside of Acorn cards. Meanwhile, the name ones can change the name of a card and affect things like Meddling Mage or Pithing Needle. Stickers themselves move across zones, at least zones that are known to the public information. That is Graveyard, Exile, and Play. Yeah, they're counters. They're essentially counters that stick to your cards. When you say it like that, counters that stick to your cards between zones, it's not that hard to grok, right? It's the additional baggage. It's the extra cost of an energy style resource. It's the effect of having 10 cards in an extra deck that you randomly draw 3 from. There's so much baggage, and the rules document, the rules page they've already released for this, and we haven't even got to release yet. The rules page is just so long and convoluted. I've just spent time explaining it to you, and I've already done it in one video before, and I'm pretty sure I've probably missed some. And the thing is, it's a fucking complicated mechanic. It's way more complicated than anything that Space Jace does. And the weird thing is, it's the first time we've ever had an extra deck in Magic. Like, even the Dungeon and Initiative and Monarch all create emblem-esque effects. They refer to essentially a tick box or a spreadsheet of a tick box or a rolling list of things that are additionally on the card that you can't see there. You need like a prompt note to know. Reading the card no longer fucking explains the card unless you have the additional prompt card with you. Fine. These are actually a separate deck. But if you don't have it with you and out or available to you at a constructed event, you are already giving away the fact that you aren't playing any of these sticker cards in your Legacy, Vintage, or Pauper deck. And I want to clarify something here that I actually left out when I was recording that I need to go back and talk about. Like I said, you're giving away information if you don't have a sticker deck presented or the other deck that I'm about to talk about presented, which is just wild. There's 2 in 1 set, but here we are. But beyond that, you're actually leaving value on the table not to show up with a sticker deck or an attraction deck when you're playing Legacy, especially if you're playing something like Ragavan. Ragavan and Nimble Pilferer steals from the opponent's deck, so you might hit one of their attraction or sticker enablers, and then you need stickers or attractions of your own to fucking play with it, because they're part of your deck. It's a customizable deck. It can't be played without your opponents if you steal the card that makes them. This might seem like a small thing, but it's a small thing that didn't need to actually exist or be a consideration or for anyone to actually give a shit about if they just made them silver bordered. And that's kind of the point that I think as I'm recording this and I'm editing now, I don't actually focus on enough, is that none of this stuff is a problem. None of these things are even considerations or issues if it was all just silver bordered. If we use the technology that we had before for unsets. But here we are instead. And then, okay, let me just clarify this as well. My point is, even then, if we say, fuck it, it's not silver border anymore, it's playable in the normal Magic the Gathering, Black Border, Legacy, Vintage, Commander, and Pauper, fine. But then perhaps exercise a small amount of caution and not introduce 2 new mechanics that bring extra decks into Magic. I think we've never had before. I think that's really common in Yu-Gi-Oh! That Magic players have kind of laughed at the complexity of before. Bringing 2 of those into the same set and then introducing them both to Black Border Magic, that is flying so close to the sun. It's like, were you so preoccupied with the idea that you could, you didn't ask if you should. So once you get all of that, I don't like it. I really just don't like the mechanic. The idea that stickers are movable counters is great. All the extra fucking baggage is dumb. And I just wonder why it had to go on to real world cards. But wait, there's more. This is not the only extra deck mechanic. We've never had an extra deck mechanic in our lives before. But we do now have 2 in the same fucking set. If you thought stickers were jumping the shark, well, hold up, there's some more jumping of sharks to be done. I stumbled over that delivery. Look, I think attractions are a bit more elegant in terms of design because they seem a lot more straightforward, but I still think it's fucking strange that we're getting 2 extra deck mechanics in the same set when we've never had one in our lifetimes. Attractions are artifacts with no mana cost. They cannot go to graveyard and they cannot go to hand. They come in, you guessed it, a 10 card minimum extra deck outside of the game. When you play a card that has the ability to, and I quote, open an attraction, the open attraction trigger will resolve by you drawing one of your shuffled 10 cards from your attraction deck and putting it into play. In this case, we see Fortune Teller, which has the visit mechanic say it scries 1. At the beginning of your main phase, at the same point that any sagas would tick up, you have a trigger that when resolved, you roll a dice. The rolling of that dice then denotes whether or not your attractions trigger. None of them seem to trigger on a 1, and then they trigger on different numbers. So in this case, this copy of Fortune Teller triggers on a 2 or a 3, not a 4 or 5, and all attractions trigger on a 6. So rolling a 6 with multiple attractions out gets you a lot of value. There's like 40 plus of these. Only 22 of them are legal in older formats. There's less than 10 available for Pauper, so Pauper doesn't have to deal with this shit. We'd have to have another initiative not making it to Modo, then making it to Modo, then getting banned. Of course, people have said this stuff is just not powerful enough to see play in Eternal formats and in Legacy. Even members of the Commander Advisory Group who have no idea how Legacy works have been chiming in to tell us it's just not powerful enough. What I want to point out at this juncture is that we don't know what all the cards look like. We haven't seen all the cards, so we just don't know that yet. And every single supplemental mechanic, including Initiative, Enter the Dungeon, and Monarch, those sort of things, have all, and voting too, have all been told at one point or another that they're just not good enough for Eternal formats. And then 1 or 2 of those cards not break, but become absolute staples in Eternal formats. Palace Jailer, Council's Judgment, and recently we had 4 or 5 cards of Initiative banned from fucking Pauper. The point I'm getting at here is that you might think that cards aren't power enough for older formats, but if you don't play those older formats, you might not be aware that the power levels of older formats are fucking strange. Sometimes a 4-mana Planeswalker is way better than you think it is in Legacy. Sometimes they print a voting mechanic that basically gets around hexproof and makes your Council's Judgments one of the best removal spells White has ever seen. I do think we should hold our fucking horses and wait to see all the cards. Abso-fucking-lutely. But also, we have to ask, why are we even opening this Pandora's box in the first place? Lifetime Pass Holder is the 1-mana 2/1 zombie guest. It's a really cool, flavorful thing. The idea that this undead creature is still coming back to the theme park that the set is based around. This thing enters the battlefield tap. When it dies, you open an attraction. And when you roll to visit an attraction, if you roll a 6, you bring this back from your graveyard. It's a 1-mana zombie, a creature type that is relevant in older formats. So at this point, I'm like, you are playing with fire. This may not be good enough for Legacy, but there's a good potential it could randomly be a combo piece in Legacy, where you assemble 10 attractions through some sort of infinite loop or some shit. It's unlikely. But also, why are we skirting so close to it? Why are we playing so dangerously close to the sun? For the most part, the Acorn cards are cards that just do not function in the real world without dexterity or some sort of outside input that would make no sense for a competitive game. For example, Rockstar asks you to ask someone else around you to decide what card in your hand or in the pile that it creates looks most like a rock band. It's a dumb mechanic that's fun for, like, well, I say fun. I think this kind of stuff is a bit too much, honestly, even in the draft environment, but it's something that's fun, self-contained within the whimsical rule-breaking of an unset. Meanwhile, Nearby Planet, on the other hand, is not actually acorned because it breaks the rules of Magic. It's actually just too good. This is a enter the battlefield tapped. You have to pay 1 when you do, or you have to sacrifice it, much like a Rupture Spire, because it makes all colours of mana. It is a rangeling, a play on the word changeling, you know, like range of land. This card is every land type. That means all basic types. It makes all 5 colours of mana. It's also a desert, a gate, a lair, a locust, and an Urza's one for all of the cards that care about that. Mark Rosewater said on Weekly MTG this week this has been acorned and not put into normal Magic because it just was too good for Legacy. So in essence, they just immediately noticed that another Locust land does make Cloudpost pretty fucking good. For the record, if you want to play this new Commander deck against me at any point in time, I'm never going to bat an eye. And I think it's a really cool card for Commander, which is another interesting question. Like, should some of these cards be legal in Commander but not Legacy? I'm coming to that. Another one that I thought was really strange was Goblin Blastronauts. I still don't actually... Whilst I thought Nearby Planet was strange, then when we thought about it, yeah, it makes sense. It's not going to be illegal. This thing is a 5/4 that enters the battlefield and opens an attraction. Whenever you roll a 6, not on attraction dice, but any dice, even a d20, I guess, at this point, or even off the Ancient Dragons from D&D, for example, you may copy the spell, ability, or attraction visit that caused you to roll that dice. You may choose new targets for the copy. Mark Rosewater said that this card was creating corner cases that they didn't like, so they acorned it. I genuinely do not know what those corner cases are. I've brought it up on my Discord, I've brought it up on Reddit, I've brought it up on stream. No one has given me a corner case where I'm like, that doesn't make sense, right? Because you can copy spells, abilities, and attraction visits are essentially triggered abilities, right? Or at least I assume they are. Maybe there's some real rules baggage with that part of it, perhaps. But ultimately, this card could have been in normal border. So the point I'm getting at with these is that they are evidently trying not to break the rules of Magic, but they're also being careful about balance. Nearby Planet being the example of the card they didn't make legal in Legacy because it would be too good. So when they then make 1-drops that open attractions, it feels like you are playing with fire. It may never be good enough, but when it's this cheap, efficient, and has this much text on it, there's a chance it might just be good enough in a weird situation where zombies are free, for example. Rooftop Storm is a Magic the Gathering card. So why the fuck are they legal in older formats? Well, because originally unsets didn't sell, they weren't going to get to do another unset, so they had to do the deal with the devil to have cards that are chase cards for Commander, which is what shits the most packs in Magic. And that brings us to the question of, why are they legal in Legacy, Pauper, Vintage, and Commander? Why not separate them out? Well, Commander and Legacy Vintage all use the same legality list. They are tied, they are married for reasons that I feel might be slightly outdated at this point if we're going into this sort of territory. Legacy and Vintage and Pauper are not heavily played formats. They are almost exclusively played digitally for the most part, if we're honest. Another point I'm about to get to. But they are still collateral damage and hurt by this stuff to an extent. These formats will probably die without support from Wizards, and we don't get much support as it is. To then have them be like just innocent bystanders in the chase the Commander money boat is a shame. And also most of these cards just won't show up on Modo, or they'll only show up on Magic the Gathering Online when they become playable in Legacy, as we saw with Vince Gamboo and the Initiative cards in Pauper. So there's going to be cards going to the format that then won't be actually on Modo. So we have now a digital client and a physical game that aren't the same. And to me, that's always bugged me. I've gotten used to it in many ways. So ultimately, I think Unfinity is quite fun. I think having cards that have affinity for clowns on them and reference pies and all this sort of stuff is fun. And having whimsy and things like that to offset the grim dark of, say, Warhammer or a heavier set like Streets of New Capenna is fine by me as well. I like comedy and whimsy in my game. I just wonder if all the upset around Space Chase and shit like that could have been absolutely avoided by making this silver border. Hell, it wouldn't have sold as well, and perhaps it might have been the last unset we ever saw, which might be a shame to some, but ultimately, who benefits from these being not just silver bordered? I get... It's a weird one, right? I'm going to end the video by saying that actually having some of them available in Commander does excite me a little bit. The idea of playing an attraction deck in Commander seems like a fun thing to do, but ultimately outside of Magic the Gathering Online in real world paper, I could have done that anyway. Recently, I was at Mana Leak prior to the Command Fest in Birmingham, held by Axiom Now, and whilst I was at Mana Leak, someone played against me an undeck, where every card, including all the lands, were uncards, and their commander was Urza Headmaster. And it was fun. It was fun, and it was silly, and I enjoyed it. And that happened anyway, without having to make people play These cards are legacy. And the other thing about that undeck is that if someone doesn't want to play against uncards and the opponent gets that out and says, do you mind if I play my undeck? You do have the option at that point to say no. This muddies the water on that too. And now we have people demanding they're going to rule 0 Jace, whilst I'm thinking that we should probably have a set rule of what is and isn't legal so that we can all maybe work from the same mature place of let's play with the tools that are available to us. But now that's a big fucking conversation to be had. A conversation that tires me out and stresses me out. Anyway, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm looking forward to playing with some of these cards. I do just wonder, ultimately, who really benefits from any of this? I've been Vince, also known as PleasantKenobi on the internet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all soon. Ta-ta for now.